Good morning. It is Tuesday, July the 20th, 2021. Let it be known, more than half of all child maltreatment cases in 2019 involved children who were 6 years old and younger, with 14.9% of cases involving infants under one. And according to the Children's Defense Fund, of these children, 251,359 entered foster care. Children in foster care are among the most vulnerable children in America. They were 423,997 children in care in 2019. Those are the latest stats available, 41% of whom were under the age of 6. These children spend an average of 19.6 months in foster care, with 14% spending more than 3 years in the system. Children of color, particularly Black and American Indian and Alaskan Native children, are dramatically overrepresented in the child welfare system. Of every 1,000 white children in the United States, 5.2 are in foster care, compared with 9.9 of every 1,000 Black children. Today, we will speak with Dr. Tammy Wilborn, of Wilborn Clinical Services, LLC, about America's foster care crisis. But first, of course, let us go to the headlines. French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday made American civil rights icon Jesse Jackson a Commander of the Legion of Honor, France's highest award, for helping change, he said, the destiny of the United States and with it, the world. Jackson, who is 79 years old, had a gallbladder surgery this year and is being treated for Parkinson's disease. He had obviously a difficult time walking, but the founder of the Rainbow Push Coalition and two-time U.S. presidential candidate sat beside the podium as the French president bestowed these honors on him. The French president said of Reverend Jackson that he's a visionary with talent for uniting and leading people, whose moral and physical courage has helped him to overcome adversity and change the destiny of the United States, our oldest ally, and to change our world for the better. Jackson's life was recounted in a ceremony, from his childhood in the segregated South to his work with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his activism in Chicago. So congratulations to Jesse Jackson on France's highest civilian honor. Now let us bring on one of Jesse Jackson's dearest and oldest friends, our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacy. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, Karen Carter Richards, our distinguished chair, and 230 African-American owned newspapers and media companies across the country, glad to be back on Let It Be Known. And certainly I join you in congratulating Reverend Jesse Jackson, I should say the Reverend Dr. Jesse Jackson, for distinguished honor from France, well-deserved. I worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson, Southern Christian Leadership Conference back in the 1960s and over in the 70s. And then when he ran for president in 1984, the Reverend Dr. Y.T. Walker and I were co-chairs of the clergy committee to support Jesse for president in 1984. And then he ran again in 1988. And he attended in 1991 the first People of Color Summit, sponsored by the United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice on Environmental Justice. So we've had a long career together. In fact, in 1993, we both were candidates to be head of the NAACP in 1993. So Reverend Jackson and I have been colleagues, comrades. We worked together, marched together, seen a lot of the challenges that Black America has faced and in the world. We also did some work together in Africa. When we had the inauguration of Nelson Mandela in 1994, we all went to the inauguration together on Air Force One. Reverend Jesse Jackson, salute to him. We know he has some health challenges right now, but he's still strong. His spirit is strong. He's still writing columns. He writes for the Black press. And so we just congratulate Reverend Jackson and his family for being long distance runners as freedom fighters for freedom, justice, and equality.
Yeah, and again, congratulations to the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Dr. Chavis, the American Academy of Pediatrics released new COVID-19 guidance for schools on Monday that supports in-person learning and recommends universal masking in school of everyone over the age of 2, regardless of their vaccination status, a stricter position than that taken this month by the CDC. The AAP believes that at this point in the pandemic, given what we know about low rates of in-school transmission when proper prevention measures are used, together with the availability of effective vaccines for those ages 12 and up, that the benefits of in-person school outweigh the risk in all circumstances, according to the guidance issued by the AAP. One of the main interventions put forward by the AAP is that all students over the age of 2 and all school staff should wear masks at school unless they have a medical or developmental condition that prohibits the wearing of masks. So, Dr. Chavis, as we look forward to the September and late August, when children start to go back to school, this mask situation and the virus situation, of course, comes into full play at this point.
Absolutely. And I want to remind our listening audience that the NMPA, we established the Coronavirus Task Force early last year because we knew it was a state of emergency for Black America. We knew that we were being disproportionately impacted negatively and deadly by the coronavirus. And so this new guidance from pediatric professionals, these are doctors who deal with children. So we got to follow the science. If they're recommending that everybody wear a mask, no matter their circumstances, whether you're vaccinated or not, whether you have symptoms or not, I think we have to follow the guidance of the scientists, particularly the scientists that deal with children. And I think that, we're taking this, so overall, I think Black America, we're taking this virus too lightly. And I think it's a serious problem. It's a life and death issue. And you recall what Dr. Ebony Hilton told us when she was on Let It Be Known, down from the University of Virginia. She told us that we have to take this very seriously. And I think that the guidance from the pediatric doctors, the guidance from the CDC, the guidance from Dr. Fauci, the guidance from all those who really know the science, and this virus is still evolving. That's why you have a variant. And there are other variants out there that probably haven't even been discovered yet. But one thing is certain, our people are still being affected and infected disproportionately, and we need to really take this very seriously. So thank you for making this one of the headlines this morning, Stacey, because if there was any issue that we need to pay attention to, it is to spread the infectious, deadly disease, COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, the New Pittsburgh Courier, the St. Louis American, and Philadelphia Tribune are among the National Newspaper Publishers Association's most successful print and digital publications, as well as the Texas Metro News and iMessenger Media and so many others. Well, the NMPA, of course, was founded 81 years ago, and the Black Press was founded in New York 194 years ago with Freedom's Journal. But Twitter has failed to acknowledge the Black press. While almost every white-owned media outlet carries the blue verification badge provided to Twitter users to recognize their credibility, authenticity, and public interest, the social media platform has turned a blind eye toward the Black press of America. Preliminary research found only the fabled New York Amsterdam News with a blue check mark. Even then, the newspaper's prolific publisher, Eleanor Tatum, does not have a verification. Publications like the Washington Informer, Atlanta Voice, Houston Forward Times, Chicago Defender, Los Angeles Sentinel, New Journal, and Guide, they're not recognized by Twitter. If you recall, the New Journal and Guide was the one who broke the story of the famous Hidden Figures, which became the blockbuster movie. And we can name so many big life-changing news stories broken by the Black press. We remember Emmett Till, of course. Dr. Chavis, that's a fight that Anthony Tillman, and he's a journalist at the Washington Informer and Dorothy Tucker, the NABJ president, has taken up on Twitter and in other places. They are waging a war, if you will, with Twitter to recognize Black-owned media.
Well, absolutely. I think that the way I look at this, Stacy, on behalf of the NMPA, certainly we want all of our papers to be verified. But on the other hand, I also think that this shows you why we need our own platforms. We should have our own. When I mean our own, I mean that we should own OWN. We should own our social media platforms. We over-index on. What I mean by over-index, more African Americans use Twitter disproportionately than to our population percentage. We over-index on Facebook. We over-index on Instagram. We over-index on TikTok. We over-index on television. We over-index on radio. And so I think that we are media conscious people, but we need ownership. That's why the Black press is so important, because we need to verify ourselves. People ask me all the time, "Are you a certified minority-owned organization?" I said, "What?" I said, "We're the Black Press of America. We certify ourselves. We verify ourselves." And so, yes, should we make demands on Twitter to verify? Absolutely. But I do not think that we should put our credibility on the line, whether or not a non-Black owned, in this case, a white owned social media company, to verify us. We are verified by the God that brought us into this world.
And 194 years, the Black Press was founded in New York, Freedom's Journal, where
Freedom's Journal was verified before anybody even heard of Twitter.
And obviously, Dr. Chavis is having an issue right now with this situation. He's letting it be known, folks. And yes, we wish to plead our own cause, because for too long, others have spoken for us. Dr. Chavis, the America's foster care system is broken. This morning, we're going to talk to someone who knows best about the foster care system. We welcome Dr. Tammy Lewis Wilborn, who will discuss America's broken foster care system with us. She is with Wilborn Clinical Services, LLC. Good morning, Dr. Wilborn.
Good morning, Stacey. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Good morning, Dr. Wilborn. We so appreciate your leadership, particularly on this particular subject matter that really impacts Black America. Thank you so much for your company, and I'm glad to see that you own your own company.
Dr. Chavis, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the work that you have done to advance the causes of Black people in terms of our well-being, in terms of our livelihood, in terms of our just being. So thank you for the work that you've done.
Thank you. God bless.
And Dr. Wilborn, let's get right into it, because as we said at the top, the foster care system is broken. But like most things we talk about, right, it disproportionately affects who? African Americans. Talk about that, Dr. Wilborn.
Absolutely. So I want to kind of back up a little bit so folks can have just a sense of where I'm situated on this topic. I've been working as a professional, serving as a professional counselor for over 21 years. And I would say probably 90% of my career has been spent serving children and adolescents. I've worked in a number of capacities, and one of those capacities was as a therapeutic foster care counselor earlier in my career. And so the perspective that I bring to this discussion is the impact mentally, physically, psychologically, the impact of foster care experiences on children and adolescents. I think one of the reasons why we don't, part of the reason why the foster care system is broken is the very people that it is intended to help and serve are not being served. Their mental and emotional and psychological needs are not being addressed. If they are young people who have spent most of their life in foster care, they're not receiving the adequate social skills and transitional adult living skills that's needed to be able to function optimally in society. And of course, in terms of education, they're oftentimes, because of multiple placements and uh, insecure attachments, they're not learning at the rate of young people who have home stability. So there's a number of different factors, and I'll continue to talk more about that. But I think we're missing the fact that the people who are supposed to be served, the youth in these systems, are not being served, and that's something we really need to be concerned about.
And Dr. Wilborn, how do we address that? How do we serve these youth?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, there's a couple of things. I think in terms of foster care, children who are in foster care, and I'm going to actually sort of segue from something that Dr. Chavis said earlier. We need to follow the science, right? Part of following the science is understanding, again, what we know in turn from counselors, from psychologists, from adolescent and child development um, physicians and professionals, the impact, for example, of trauma on young people and the need to provide trauma informed clinical services. But the other piece that I want to say, and I think this is also important, is understanding that when you're talking about young people, black kiddos in particular, that the clinical services, the counseling, mental health services also need to be culturally responsive. Because if
Mhm.
it's not culturally responsive, it's not trauma informed, right? And so I think recognizing the importance of meeting the mental health, psychological health, physical health needs of these young people are critical. The other thing that's important too, Stacy and Dr. Chavis, is that we need to make sure that the folks who are serving as foster parents, as serving as caregivers, as substitute caregivers, if you will, for these young people, they also need support. They need training on how uh, to utilize parenting skills that effectively support the healthy development of these young people. Oftentimes, these kiddos are placed in foster homes, and the foster parents don't receive the support. They may or may not be getting paid. They may or may not be receiving parent skills training. They may or may not be receiving support to promote healthy development. So I think we also need to recognize the need to support the people who are taking care of these young people.
Yeah, I'd like you to respond. Cheryl Smith, one of our publishers, she's out in Texas. She says those who can must step up in the foster care system. I'm proud to say I have kept 5 children out of the system and have been supportive of those who are also trying. Sadly, however, those who are helping have been underfunded. It shouldn't hurt to help.
Absolutely. Cheryl's point is very well taken. That was actually something that was priority. So I worked for a large nonprofit at that time that was headquartered in Memphis, and the program was called Therapeutic Foster Care, because there was not only therapeutic support to the young people, but there was also support to the foster parents in terms of some of that parent skills training. And as part of that program, we would have monthly parent support groups, foster care parent support groups, where the foster parents would come and voice their concerns about what their needs were, whether that was, not receiving a per diem that reflected the actual needs of the young people, whether that was, voicing their concerns about not receiving other types of support. And so, to Cheryl's point, the foster parents have to be supported in taking care of these young people if these young people are to experience foster care in a way that's healthy and helpful.
Yeah. And before we move forward with that conversation, we we would be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about Wilburn Clinical Services LLC.
Yes, yes. So Wilborn Clinical Services, thank you for that. Wilborn Clinical Services is a tele mental health private practice based here in New Orleans, and many of the clients that I serve at this point, I mostly work with adults. I've transitioned from working with children and adolescents, but the majority of my clients, 98% of my clients, are adults and women of color, and so in that particular practice, there are a number of issues that are addressed, from depression, anxiety, trauma, workplace discrimination. As a clinician, as a researcher, as a writer, my specialty is working specifically with Black women of color, not Black women of color, but Black women who've experienced race and gender stereotypes in the workplace, and specifically how those experiences of stereotypes lead to wellness issues. And so my practice is one that is rooted in being culturally responsive and centering the cultural, social, economic, political realities of Black people in this these United States of America.
Yeah. And Bobby Henry says we have hired, he's a publisher at the West Side Gazette in Florida. He says we have hired students in foster care. Now they come with a lot of issues, so it could be extremely difficult, but we have to try to help. Just briefly respond to that, then we'll throw it to Dr. Chavis.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that folks often misunderstand about young people in foster care is when you are used to not receiving consistent love, when you are not used to receiving secure attachments, when you are not used to receiving, experiencing stability, love, attachment, and stability feels like a threat, right? It feels like a threat. And so I think a lot of the work, specifically with folks who are involved with young people in foster care, is helping them to understand the traumatic experiences that these young people go through when they don't receive the basic things that we all need, but because of whatever the factors are that have put them in foster care, those young people have not gotten. And so there's oftentimes a need for some of that psychoeducational work to be done to help folks understand, just because you're showing love, just because you're showing stability, just because you're offering attachments, secure attachments, it does not mean that the young people are going to receive that, right? That they're going to be receptive to that. So that education is really important in helping folks to understand what these young people are actually going through.
Wow, Dr. Wilborn, some valuable insight. Dr. Chavis?
Yes, I was just fascinated listening to Dr. Wilborn, her expertise. And good news, Dr. Wilborn, the NMPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, our national convention next year in June will be in New Orleans. And so we're coming down, and we definitely want to highlight some of your work as we come to New Orleans. Terry Jones, who was on our board of directors, the New Orleans Data News, published one of our publishers. We have also the Louisiana Weekly and the Louisiana Tribune, the New Orleans Tribune newspapers. But can you tell us, from an entrepreneur perspective, how Black-owned businesses making it in New Orleans, a great city, a great tourism, and I know the virus has been particularly impactful on New Orleans. But can you just tell us, what is your business, your LLC, and others? What is the forecast for progress from an economic perspective?
Dr. Chavis, I think it's such an important question, and I do hope to connect with you all when you come down to New Orleans.
I think did we lose Dr. Wilborn there?
No, I hear her. She's on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Wilborn.
So I think the forecast for Black entrepreneurship probably looks like it looks nationally. I think that a lot of Black-owned businesses absolutely have suffered, particularly as it relates to COVID-19. But we were suffering before COVID-19, right? Because the challenge of Black business owners is always access to capital and funding. And, we shouldn't have to go into debt to be able to run our businesses. But that is often the case is, we're trying to get loans. That's if we can get a loan, right? I mean, we're not going to even talk about the
Yes.
challenges of securing that type of funding. And so New Orleans is, I think, a unique hub of Black entrepreneurship. I think historically, Black entrepreneurship has been a bedrock of our community. And so despite some of the challenges that we typically face, I think we are a resilient community. And we work together for the most part to really try to support the businesses that are here in our community. So, what's the forecast? Cloudy with a little bit of sun.
All right.
And we're holding on.
Very good. Well, we look forward to working with you between now and next June. And again, please know that the Black Press of America, we support your efforts, your leadership on this critical issue affecting our young people, our whole family. Back in the day, Dr. Wilborn, I'm sure you know about cultural sensitivity. Every child in the community was part of every family, and we looked after one another. Everybody was part of the extended family in Black America, and we need to not just have sympathy, but empathy for one another.
Indeed, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Chavis, again, for the work that you've done to really foster and buffer Black community. Thank you so much. And thank you as well, Stacey.
Yeah, and before we let you go, Dr. Wilborn, just to close out, just for the moment, this topic of foster care and the foster care system in America is something that we're going to continue to follow. You can read more about this at blackpressusa.com, and many of our member papers. We have more than 230 newspapers and media companies that make up NNPA and the Black Press of America. But Dr. Wilborn, a final thought on you want to leave us today with on the foster care system, specifically as it pertains to children of color.
Mm-hmm. Again, thank you so much for having me. I think, going back to, and I just want to segue again from Dr. Chavis's point, our children are our future. And they are indeed our best investment, whether we're talking about children in foster care or children outside of foster care. It is all of our job and our responsibility to make sure that our young people have the basic tools that they need to not only survive in this world, but to thrive. And that is everybody's job, not just the job of some. It's the job of the village.
Yeah, takes a village. Dr. Chavis, a brief closing thought from you. And thank you so much, Dr. Wilborn.
Absolutely. And, I just want to segue what Dr. Wilborn just quoted. It does take a village to raise a child, and it takes a child to raise the village. I think that the focus on foster care is so important. And I ask all of our listeners, all of our viewers throughout the United States to pay attention, to respond, and to grapple. I've also worked with the National Association of Black Social Workers, and Dr. Wilborn knows that a couple of decades ago there was a problem. No one wanted to adopt Black kids, and there was transracial adoption. And what we focused on was the value of our children. And I'm so pleased that the 23,000 children that were on that list, this is back in 1995, we got all of them adopted after the Million Man March, because we gave up the 800 number. We talked about the importance, and I was so proud. And 25, 30 years later, I run into some of those young people that were adopted. They now have children of their own. They're building families of their own. So it is about, reach one, teach one, help one. We raise ourselves up when we look after not only the least of these, we look after all of these in our community. So God bless you, Dr. Wilborn.
God bless you, Dr. Chavis. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining us. And we really appreciate all of the valuable information, Dr. Wilborn, that you brought this morning. Wish we had more time, because we know that there's so much more we can cover with you. Perhaps we'll have you back in the not too distant future. We appreciate it. And everyone, let it be known, remember this, never allow a person to tell you no who don't have the power to tell you yes. We will see you tomorrow.